Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Secretary Vilsack, let me just thank you for being so on top of the forest fire situation. You visited my state of New Mexico when we were right in the middle of the Little Bear fire right down near Ruidoso. That was a fire that destroyed 254 structures in the summer of 2012, 245,000 acres. And I think you saw the remarkable thing was how dedicated your people are, all the way from the incident commanders down to the people that are fighting fires. And we're facing another, because of the drought, very severe fire season. As your map shows here, New Mexico's right at the center of the target in terms of the drought, and so we know that you're going to stay on top of that and make sure that the personnel and the air tankers and all of that are in place. I wanted to ask about the FSA payments, and I wanted to thank you for getting the Farm Service Agency payments back online this week. The last several years have been very difficult for producers in New Mexico, so the payments have been vital to keeping producers afloat. The freeze in payments this spring has been hard on many people in New Mexico, especially the freeze on the NAP payments. This is another example of the terrible toll that sequestration is taking on our country. Because of the time it took to get these payments back online, I know many of my constituents are not confident that the payment is actually coming. Will you confirm for me and my constituents that FSA payments are indeed back online, particularly the NAP payments? In short, Mr. Secretary, is the check in the mail?
Effective today, it's online, Senator. And the reason, frankly, that it wasn't was because we were uncertain about the impacts and consequences of sequester and didn't want to create more of a situation where payments went out the door only to have folks having to refund or return them. And so beginning today, we're back online and payments will be going to be made in short order.
Thank you very much. Over the last 3 years of drought in New Mexico, there's been a 50 to 60% decline in the cattle population in my state. The impact on this ongoing drought has obviously had a very, it has been very terrible in New Mexico. And as you know, several senators have been working for months to try to get livestock disaster programs that expired in 2011 renewed and retroactive. And I'm pleased to see that the President's FY14 budget includes a proposal for renewal of the livestock forage program and the livestock indemnity program for 2014 through 2018. We expect the Farm Bill to come to the floor for a vote in the coming weeks. If we are able to renew these programs with retroactive authority, would the USDA be able to carry out back payments? What would this mean for producers in New Mexico and other states who have had several years of drought and loss? And what do you expect the need is nationwide for these programs?
Well, I think the need is reflected in the budget request, Senator. This is something that I think needs to be done. It's unfortunate that disaster assistance was not fully funded in the previous Farm Bill and that it was allowed to extinguish. So we're very supportive of continuing this. What it means to producers is obviously resources, and what it means is a reassuring that banker that there's a safety net in place that will make it a little bit easier for that producer to get the credit that he or she needs to be able to continue to expand their operation.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, coming from a state where water infrastructure is a priority need, in almost every community it's unsettling to see the proposed cuts in the President's FY14 budget. And I'm especially concerned about the cuts of almost 50% to grants and loans for water and wastewater infrastructure for tribal communities and colonias. Even the basic need for running water is not being filled in many of these communities in New Mexico. I'm also concerned about the cuts to the Circuit Rider program for rural water systems and the wastewater and waste disposal loans and grants in the RUS. Could you explain the logic behind these seemingly disproportionately high cuts to water infrastructure? What kind of impact do you expect these cuts would have on rural communities, including tribes and colonias? And has there been any decline in the need for this kind of water infrastructure funding?
Senator, you all will be faced with the same set of decisions that we made and had to make in terms of the budget. You're given a number, and you've got to fit all of the competing needs and interests within that number. In a perfect world, we'd have more money to spend. We're not living in a perfect world. We're living in a very imperfect world. So obviously, choices have to be made. Our view is that the loan interest rate on the loan portion of the water program does provide us the capacity, and for many communities, the opportunity to improve their water systems. The need is significant. There's no question about that. That's why we have to look at ways in which we can extend and leverage our resources effectively. I've said earlier about our efforts to reach out to other investors who may potentially be able to provide opportunities to these communities. You mentioned the Colonias in particular. I will tell you that our Strike Force initiative is focused directly on that area, and it has also been extended to New Mexico. So many of the most impoverished areas are getting more attention and more assistance than ever before. We're just dealing with a very difficult budget. Do you take money from housing to put in water? Do you take money from farm programs to put in water? Do you take money from nutrition to put in water? Do you take money from rural development and business growth to put in water? It's hard. And so my view of this is you're not going to be able to meet all the needs to the extent that they need to be met. So we've got to think creatively. And one way we're going to think creatively is going to nonprofit foundations and saying, you invest a lot of grant money in communities. What about your investment portfolio? Where are you putting your business investments to generate the income that you grant? Can you consider putting it in rural America? Investment banks, are you aware of these utility opportunities in rural areas? Corporations, are you aware of the opportunity for you to meet a social responsibility requirement by investing in rural areas? I think we have to think broadly about where resources can come from. You're going to face the same difficult decisions we faced, and we'll see how you all do.
Thank you very much, and I know you come from a rural state, and you feel these issues a lot, and I know you're working hard on them. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.